What if improving your English didn't mean memorizing grammar rules or sitting through long lessons? What if it meant just listening to a fun story every day? That's the idea behind these videos. Today, you're going to follow one guy's confusing airport adventure, and you're going to learn English without even trying. That's the magic of storytelling. So hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications. We drop a new story every single day. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Josh had always thought of himself as someone who stayed calm during travel. He wasn't the kind of person who panicked over a late bus or forgot to pack his toothbrush. But airports were a whole different level of chaos. It was his first time traveling alone, and he was flying to Rome for a short vacation after finishing exams. He had packed everything the night before, printed his boarding pass, checked the airline's app, and even looked at videos explaining how to go through security faster. He was ready, or so he thought. He arrived at the airport earlier than necessary. It was still dark outside, and the place had that sleepy feeling. Quiet announcements, soft rolling of suitcases, and the smell of bad coffee floating through the air. He passed through security without trouble, found a spot to sit, and opened a book. His gate number was printed clearly on his boarding pass, and that was all he needed. After about half an hour, he noticed people around him slowly starting to move. Some were packing up their bags. Others were putting on jackets. A few were glancing at the screens above. Josh stayed where he was. There was still plenty of time, and the gate printed on his ticket hadn't changed. He was confident, but after a while, he started to feel that strange travel anxiety. That tiny voice that says, maybe just double check. So he stood up and looked around. Something didn't feel right. The people near him were speaking a language he didn't recognize. He looked at the screen above the gate. It was showing a destination he had never heard of. That was odd. He pulled out his boarding pass again. Same flight number, same gate. Then he looked at the airport's large digital board showing all the departures. His heart skipped a beat. His flight had a new gate, a completely different gate, on the other side of the terminal, and boarding had already started. His stomach dropped. He looked around again, hoping he had misread something. But the truth was clear. He had been sitting at the wrong gate for over an hour. The gate printed on his boarding pass was no longer correct. It must have changed after he had passed through security. He had never thought to check again. He felt a sudden wave of heat rush through his body. Not panic exactly, but something close. He grabbed his bag and started moving. The signs above the hallway pointed in every direction. Some gates were straight ahead. Others were to the left. A few were down a flight of stairs. He moved quickly, trying not to run, but also not wanting to waste a single second. The airport suddenly felt much larger than before. He passed a coffee shop, a small bookstore, a line of people waiting for something he didn't have time to figure out. His backpack bounced slightly against his shoulders with every step. He reached the main hallway and looked again at the screen. His new gate was listed clearly now. He wasn't even close. Without thinking, he started jogging. Just a little at first. then a bit faster. He dodged around a group of travelers pulling suitcases. He passed a family arguing over directions. He weaved between signs and seating areas, following the numbers that would lead him to his gate. His breathing grew faster. His legs began to ache. His palms were slightly sweaty, gripping the straps of his bag tightly. Finally, after what felt like forever, he reached the correct gate. The area was nearly empty. The gate agent was still there, checking the last few passengers in. He stepped forward, holding out his boarding pass. The agent scanned it without saying a word, nodded, and waved him through. He walked down the jet bridge, his breath starting to slow down, his face red and warm. He felt both embarrassed and relieved. He wasn't going to miss the flight, but only by a few minutes. When he reached his seat on the plane, he dropped into it like a rock. He looked out the small oval window and thought about what had just happened. It was such a small mistake, just one detail, but it had nearly ruined his entire trip. He had done everything right, arrived early, packed smart, checked his boarding pass, but he had missed the most important part, staying updated. For the rest of the flight, he couldn't stop thinking about how close he had come to missing the plane. He replayed the moment he looked up at the gate screen and realized something was off. That feeling in his stomach, the sudden rush of movement, the maze of the terminal. He smiled quietly to himself. Now he had a story, not just a memory of flying to Rome, but a memory of almost not flying to Rome. A story he would tell again and again. When the plane landed and he stepped into the warm Italian air, he promised himself something. Always check the gate again, no matter what the boarding pass says. Always double check, and maybe buy less coffee and more attention. That night, as he sat in a small square in the city, eating something he couldn't pronounce and listening to the buzz of conversations around him, he opened his travel journal and began writing. He wrote about the airport, about the wrong gate, about the running, about how travel isn't just about seeing new places. It's about learning things the hard way and still laughing about them later. Because sometimes the most important lessons come when you're out of breath and nearly left behind. And just like that, you've picked up all kinds of English structures: past tense, descriptive storytelling, sequencing words, without sitting through a boring grammar lesson. That's the power of learning through stories. It sticks. So if you enjoyed this story, leave a like, subscribe, and make sure you've got notifications on, because we post a new immersive English story every day. Now tell us in the comments, have you ever gone to the wrong place or made a small mistake while traveling? What happened? We'd love to hear your adventure.